Hey everybody, this is me, the Undead Viking. This is Space Editor. Space Editor is, well, it's got cards, but it's a tile-laying game. Each person is going to take on the role of one of the progenitors of the universe, if you will. Okay, it's a big task, but it's a theme, and obviously the theme could have been anything, but I kind of like what they did with this theme because it makes sense as far as the way the different cards are going to interact with each other, and also just like the artwork and everything is really, really fantastic in this. So each person will have a different deck. There's a water deck, an earth deck, a wind deck, and a fire deck. So in each one of them will have like different like cards that are within their deck. Ostensibly, they're all going to be one of three different types of cards. There's going to be like star cards, there's going to be ability cards, and there's going to be planet cards. The big thing is that you want your stars to be part of the universe when the game is over. The star cards are going to be the ones that get you your points. Along the way, each player is going to just try to like make sure that your stars don't exist the creation of the universe. They do this by causing your cards to be flipped over and to disappear. And so then after everybody has played, there's two different ways to play, and I'll explain those in a little bit. But ultimately, the game is over once everybody is out of cards and they don't have anything else to play. When they don't have any cards left, you'll look at your universe. Whoever has the most points visible, you'll total those up, and then that'll be the winner of the game. It is a fantastic game, and like I said, there's two different ways to play that are rules-wise aren't very different at all, but they still offer you a very varied and fun different way to play in each way. And so like yeah, I liked it a lot, but I'm giving away the ending here a little bit. But let me show you how the game is played. I'll go over the rules with you, and then we'll come back here and I'll give you my final thoughts. Alright, so this is Space Editor, and I am not showing you all of the cards that are in the game. I just have the base deck set up for all the different elements. So like you can see here, green, I mean that would be earth. We have blue, which is water, and then we have fire, and then we have wind. So there are the different elements, and as far as like the elements, like them contrasting, a lot of people will say like, you know, water and fire fight more or something like that. That doesn't really matter. It's just basically the cards are there, so you know that you have all of the right, you know, like deck, if you will. Alright, so the basic idea of the game is that you are, the theme is that you're starting off the beginning of the universe and you're creating the different stars and what have you. Now there is a game that is for more than 2 players. You can play with 2, 3, or 4 people, and there's a game that is just for 2 players. I'm going to show you the 2, 3, or 4 player game because that's what I played more than this, but I did play the 2-player game with my daughter and we had some fun with it. Ostensibly, the only big difference between the 2 different types of games is that the 2 to 4 is a more casual game. Each person's going to have a deck of cards, and you're going to draw 2 cards on your hand, and then you're going to pick 1 card and you're going to discard the other. And so you just do that until everybody's deck is completed. With the 2-player game, it's a lot more strategic and tactical due to the fact that you're only going to have 1 deck of cards each, and you're going to draw 4 cards, and at the beginning of each turn you're going to draw 1, and you're going to see all of your cards, and you're going to be able to play all of your cards as 2 players. Now the reason why you don't see all and play all the cards with 4 players is because of space, mind you, like on your table or what have you, because of the fact with 4 players and you're only using half of each deck, then there's going to be less, like you aren't going to take up as much of the table. Basically, you know, ostensibly, you're going to take up the same amount of space as a 2-player game if people used all of 2 decks. Makes sense, right? Alright, cool. So this is like the basic card that is placed into the middle. 1 player will take this and put this somewhere on the table. Now when they place it on the table, they are allowed by the rules to place this anywhere on the table they want, and then you can have a certain amount of space as far as your play area goes. Now you can place it right smack dab in the middle. That means that you're going to have, you know, the whole table basically to use. But if somebody wanted to put it like over on an edge or something like that, they definitely can, and that will actually change the outlook of the game because of the fact that there'll be less room to build certain things in certain spots. Alright, cool. So that's pretty straightforward. Now I should mention There's a couple things about this card. One of the things about it is it's the base point, meaning that it is like where you begin, because when you play a card and place it on a card, I mean, this is, you know, as I said, a tile laying game, but you're using cards instead. When you place one, the card that you place has to be attached to the other card in some way, and so, you know, just keep that in mind. And then the cards will be flipped over, but not this one. You know, so when you place a card, this one is kind of just there to stay. It'll never get flipped, and it is just parked. And these two little numbers here, these are the different powers of these cards, as far as like how like this is nuclear energy here, this is gravity energy here, but I'll get to that in just a little bit. But what it is that these will limit what kind of card what can be placed next to it, as well as having nothing on these two sides will limit what kind of cards can be placed on those. As far as the 4 different colors on it, don't worry about it. It doesn't really matter. Alright, cool. Let me just show you a couple of these cards here from this deck so you can kind of see what you have. So each person's deck is gonna, they're not exactly the same. So like different decks are going to work different ways. They're going to have different numbers of different cards in their hands. And also, since you can build decks and you can take, because the game does give you a bunch of extra cards that will extend gameplay, you can go through your deck and build a deck of cards that you want to play with in the particular game. But anyway, for the most part, these cards will have, like, you know, these you know, fantastic art. I should mention, I really like the artwork on these cards. I think they did a really good job. It evokes the theme a great deal, but also like obviously, you know, they're color wise. Here, let me show you. So obviously that's like the wind. Here's like earth, you know, or dirt, or whatever you want to call it. You know, once again, you know, green themed, and so it's very obvious to be able to see what each deck is. But so, you know, like, so some of them will have instructions on them, like when a player turns this card face down, they will turn over a face down card. And so, you know, they have different powers. And then when you enact those powers, then you get to affect the board a little bit. Let me see if I can just find one that actually, like a star card that will have a point total on it. There you go. So this is a point total. Like, so if this card is face up at the end of the game, the yellow player or wind player will get 3 victory points at the end. And some cards, you know, will have more like that. And so these are the cards that you want to keep in play and you want them to be running. Now, some cards, you can see this is with this little X here, that is called a binary star. And so if you can put 2 cards down on the board that look like this, and have a binary, and mind you, they have to be of the same element. If they're different, it's going to count against you. But if you can put both of these cards down like this, you're going to multiply these 2 numbers together. So this combination will be worth 12 points if it still exists at the end of the game. So something to keep in mind. Alright, so let me just talk also, if I could, about these different symbols that are on each side of these. And so you can kind of see there's this little flippy thing here, there's a triangle here, and there's that kind of like square or trapezoid thing there. And for to show this, let me just actually grab like some other cards from this deck so you can kind of see how they interact or whatever. Alright, so this particular card has like this is the nuclear energy value of the card, this is the gravitational energy of the card, and this is the kinetic attack of the card. And then we'll talk about each one. So nuclear energy can only be attached to a side that either has a nuclear energy side to it or has a gravitational energy to it. It cannot be attached to a side that is a blank. You couldn't put this card next to this card like so. Gravitational energy sides can go against gravitational, nuclear, and also a blank side. You know, so they have a little bit more versatility, if you will, as far as their placement goes. Now, cards with a blank side, like so, can be placed down next to, as you probably guessed, gravitational energy, like so, and also sides with no side as well, like that. But they also can be placed down next to a card that is face down. Now, mind you, this would not work, and this would not work as far as placing them down. You have to, but that would work. Now, the final one, as we said, is this little kinetic flippy guy here. So, as you can probably guess, this is going to cause a card next to it to flip over. And you have to attach it to either a side that is like this, So you place it down, and that'll cause it to flip like so. Or you can place it on one like that, which will cause it to flip back over to the other side. Now, that isn't the only way you can flip these over. Obviously, I showed you that one that said that when you, like, the action on the card said that when you flipped it over, it would, the person that did that would be able to flip over the other side of the other card. So, you know, there are other ways to flip them, but that is the main way that you do it. Alright, but now this is where we're going to get a little funky and a little interesting. So I'm going to kind of move these out of the way here just so you can kind of see this. So, another way that you're going to be able to flip cards over is if, when you place a card down, like let's just say this one's down, and alright, so if somebody were to place this card down, like so, you can see this has a nuclear energy of 9, whereas this has a nuclear energy of 3. When you place that card down, like if this card here has a 3, so it's lower, and it's going to cause this to get flipped over. But here's the thing: if you have a card that has more than one of those triangles on it, like this one only has one of the triangles. Let me find one in here. So here we have a card that has a nuclear energy of 5 on this side and 7 on that side. So let's just go ahead and move that one out of the way, like so. So we have like this 9 that's higher than the 7, but that would not cause this to get flipped yet. We would actually have to place another card. So like, you know, let's take this one that has this 8 on that side. To successfully get it flipped over with the nuclear energy, you'd have to place it over on that side, and then that would cause this to flip over. Now, the exact same thing is going to hold true with using these nuclear energy amounts, is if the gravitational energy on either side is greater. So I'm just going to try to find one here. So here we have a gravitational energy card. Here we have a 7 on this side and a 5 on that side. And so if this was on the board, like so, and then there was a 9 greater than that 7, and then we placed this card like so, the 8's greater than the 5, that would cause it to be flipped over as well. So that's when the nuclear energy is greater than the gravitational energy on each card. Now finally, gravitational energy can actually cause cards to be flipped, but it has to be, the cards have to be on the side, 2 sides of any face of card with no symbol on it are connected with any gravitational energy. So if we had this card here and we had gravitational energy on this side of the side with no symbol on it. And let's see if we can go ahead. I gotta grab another. And mind you, I should mention that, like, if there'll be times when, like, certain cards you'll want them to be flipped over of your own side because the information on it will actually benefit you if they're flipped. And so if you placed a card like this, this would actually cause your own card to be flipped over. And I should mention as well that when cards get flipped over, they are flipped over. You can't say, what did that card say again? And take it and peer at the card or whatever and try to like see like what it was as far as the ability was. Once it is flipped over, you can't look at it. You have to kind of memorize what that card did and what it's done. Also, I should mention, when the card does get flipped over and visible, when that happens, you don't do the power of the text again. You know, it's one of those things where that power of the text only happens if, like, it's something that says if this card is flipped face up, and then the reaction happens. Like, I mean, this card has text on it that says that when it's placed, that's what matters. But that won't happen again when you flip it over if you were to have an action flipped over. Now, the last thing that can cause, as I said, is if you place one of these with a little circle, the kinetic energy, that would cause it to get flipped like so. Alright, so this is one of those games where you kind of always have to be aware of the different cards that are in your hand and the abilities of those cards and where you're placing them. And you also have to remember that there are going to be times when you just simply can't, like certain cards in your hand won't be allowed to be played in certain spots. You can't ever place a card down in a spot that is going to cause it to be turned over. Meaning that, like, this card has, you know, these 2 blank sides, and like I'm putting this together just for what have you. But let's, for example, say you wanted to place this card here for some reason. You couldn't do that because this would immediately cause that card to be flipped over. Of course, you also have the situation where you can't place a card in a spot where there isn't a connectable connection, if you will. Remember, like, there's different rules, like the nuclear energy can't be placed against a side that is blank. It has to be placed on a side that is facing either gravitational or nuclear energy. Also, depending upon where this card was placed, if you can't just physically place the card on the table without it falling off the table or falling off the play area, then you can't place it either. Alright, so those are the different rules as far as how the game is, like the placement of the cards and what governs the placement of the cards. Now remember, you have the two different ways to play. And so what happens normally in a two-player game is that you're going to have two cards in your hand, and you're going to pick one, you're going to play one of the cards onto the board, and then you're going to take the other one, you're going to discard it. And then you're going to draw two more cards into your hand, and then your next turn you just do the exact same thing. Place one, discard one, and so forth. Once the game is all over, each person will look at all the face-up cards they have that have victory points on them. Like this one just has a 1 on it, but that would still be worth 1 victory point at the end of the game if it was done. If you have those two binary stars, as I said, you multiply those together. If you have a binary connection of two opposite kinds of stars, let me just find a fire binary star, if you will. If you have those together, that you're going to deduct the points from each person's score. So if you had these two together, like this 2 and this 5, and those are together, you would deduct 5 and deduct 2 from the score of both fire and water, respectively. Now, mind you, water might have a situation where they place a card down like that for the purposes, redwood, for the purpose of actually reducing water's score by 5 points, because in the end it would ultimately help them in some way to like reduce them, even though they're reducing their score by 2, it's still a net of 3. And that happens a lot when you're playing two-player games because of the fact there is a lot more strategy and a little more tactics involved, because once again, you're playing every single card from your deck. So there you go. I mean, that is Space Editor. I played lots of these tile laying games. I've definitely played lots of these like area control tile laying games, and I always really enjoy the puzzle of each turn of controlling your little world, if you will, and trying to connect your stuff together and to get as many points as possible and trying to fend off what the other people are doing. Now, I liked both versions of the game very, very much, but for different reasons, so let me talk about that in my final thoughts. Alright, so thank you for learning how to play Space Editor with me. If you have any questions about the rules, you can, of course, ask me about those, or you can go to the game page or the Kickstarter page and you can check those out as well. Alright, so as I said, there's two different ways to play, and I enjoyed them both a great deal. Now, what did I really like about them? Well, for starters, like I said, I played it more as a multiplayer game than as a head-to-head type game. The reason I really liked the multiplayer game is because it was kind of like a relaxed and kind of chill thing. And because there's something I really liked about it, because of the fact that you had the two cards in your hand and you kind of watched the table, the board get created as you were playing. You had a lot of time to analyze the board and figure out the way you wanted to place which card at which spot, and then get rid of the other one. And I really liked the fact that you discarded one of the card. There were a lot of times when you get two cards and they both were really good and something you really liked about them, but unfortunately you weren't able to use both of them. And so I thought that added a really good element to the game that it added a little chaos, added a little luck, obviously, but I'm a big fan of that. I'm a big fan of just throwing a wrench in somebody's plans. Even if it isn't me doing it, the game itself will just kind of cause those stumbling blocks. I think a lot of times when you have games that are very deterministic, you get people that just get into this plan or this method, if you will, and it's just and they just play the game kind of the same way each time, and that's something that I kind of rebel against a little bit. Now, that being said, the two-player game, if you like that, because you're going to see every single card in your hand, and so that's kind of like one of those weird things about it's kind of a deck building game. I wouldn't really say that, because it isn't something where you're going out and you're buying cards or anything like that, but you can put the 25 cards that you want to play with together at the beginning of the game, and you know then with the 2-player game you're going to see all 25 of those cards, and so you have situations where you'll be setting yourself up, setting together chains, maybe with the cards that you have in your hand, or maybe the fact that you are hoping that you're going to see a certain card later on in the game that will like kind of complete a good binary star system for you. It will be a good blocker or what have you. I really like the fact that a lot of the cards just had these like you just on sight you could kind of see what they were. There wasn't a lot of like hidden, like you need to play this 3-4 times or go and log on to some forum or something like that to find out what the ultimate strategy of those cards are. Planet cards are blockers, basically. They protect your own star systems because you can put them in front of them, and so people can't get at them. And you know, because planets will have larger numbers normally for those different gravitational or nuclear effects, and but also they're cards you can use to gum up different works and things like that, and cause people not to be able to do what they want to do. So they're kind of like both defenders and attackers, and I kind of really enjoyed that. And plus the ability cards, I mean, just the fact that you have those abilities and the fact that you have to memorize where they're at, I thought that added a nice little element as well. You know, so I did enjoy all of those different aspects of the game. Now, it was my daughter is my #1 person I play 2-player games with. She's like, well, I kind of have her trapped, and she's available all the time. She was, I mean, she thought this was cool enough, but I don't know, there's something about it. I think maybe the area control part of it didn't really. She didn't acclimate to it very well, and so she had a little bit of difficulty determining it. So maybe this wouldn't be, you know, my daughter is 10, so maybe it was a little bit beyond her as far as age goes. I mean, I think if we had played it 3 or 4 more times, you know, she would have grasped it and had it going pretty well. Ostensibly, I do have a couple of friends that I play a lot of 2-player games with, and I did bust this out and play a couple rounds with them, and they really enjoyed it. So people, lifelong gamers type of that, we really enjoyed the strategy elements and the tactical elements of like pitting our minds against one another and trying to outthink and outguess and outdo. So yeah, I mean, it's just like what makes a good game for me? A game that I have fun playing, and a game that like keeps me coming back for more and keeps me wanting to play it just to kind of test it out and keep playing it. I guess I just really like the mystery of the 2 cards and having to discard one. I really like that aspect of it. And like I said, you can play that 2 players. And I will say this, when I played that 2 players with my daughter, she really enjoyed that more than having the 4 cards and just having to keep planning ahead and planning ahead and planning ahead. So there you go. That is Space Editor. If you have any questions about it, please ask away. I'll be happy to answer those as best as I can. As always, thank you very much for taking the time to watch this video. And until next time, I am the Undead Viking, and I'm telling you to have yourself one heck of an awesome day. Alright, bye-bye.